In our news bulletin for this evening, the Niue High Court is in session this week, starting with the civil and criminal court cases that were held on Monday. The dengue fever alert remains in force to avoid further spread. A passenger on the flight to Niue who was temporarily detained by Niue police on arrival has been given a stern warning. Motor vehicle accidents are becoming too common, with another motor vehicle accident last week that has been attributed to speeding and drink driving. The Niue High Court was in session this week with Judge Craig Coxhead proceeding, starting with civil and criminal matters on Monday. A majority of the criminal cases presented by the Niue police were adjourned to the next sitting due to counsel for the defendants not being on island, and also some charges were withdrawn. In a high-profile case that has been before the court since last year, a decision was made that Zaan Kavisi was guilty of negligent driving causing the death of Elvis Walter Tanaki. The motor vehicle accident last year left the community stunned and shocked, and initially the defendant entered a plea of not guilty with the indication that he would plead guilty to a reduced charge of negligent driving. This case was brought before Judge Craig Coxhead this week with filed witness statements, reports and additional information for court's consideration. The police had also engaged a specialist forensic pathologist to provide an expert opinion on the cause of death, and then applied to the court to have the expert evidence included to determine this case. Defence counsel opposed that application, stating that they would like to rely on the opinions of the two doctors from the hospital that noted the most likely cause of death was cardiac arrest. However, in assessing all the evidence, Judge Coxhead found beyond reasonable doubt that the cause of death in these circumstances, based on Professor Duflo's report and expert opinion, was that the deceased died of traumatic asphyxiation, the result of the motor vehicle accident. In sentencing, Mr. Kavisi was disqualified from driving or holding a driver's license for 12 months, with a limited license granted for the purpose of driving to and from his workplace, and was also required to pay a fine of $500 within a month. The Niue Health Department has advised that the island is still in the alert period for dengue fever until 14 days is over from the time that the case was first diagnosed. Spraying programs for the whole of Alofi were carried out this week, and repeat spraying for the areas visited will be repeated after 7 days from Saturday. Health are continuing to monitor those who have been in contact with the person who tested positive for dengue, and that includes all border control officers and their families. Monitoring will go for 14 to 21 days. The Niue Boys Brigade has also cancelled their camp this weekend as Health tries to minimize the mobilization of people at this very critical time as part of prevention efforts. Niue Health continues to emphasize the importance of destroying all mosquito breeding places from homes, and the importance of reporting any cases who have dengue symptoms immediately. A passenger was temporarily detained and questioned and given a stern warning by the airport authorities on his arrival to Niue last Friday. A man in his early 60s was reported to the authorities here in Niue after an incident while on the Air New Zealand flight to Niue. The passenger said the verbal interactions between him and the air hostess happened when he stood up to stretch his legs while the seatbelt light was on, and when the Air New Zealand hostess told him to sit down, this provoked a verbal response which prompted the hostess to ask her supervisor to intervene. Chief of Police Tony Edwards says that the individual was spoken to by police on arrival and was given a stern warning to be mindful of the instructions while travelling, regardless of the circumstances, especially when the plane is thousands of feet in the air. While Air New Zealand have an obligation to make sure that passengers arrive at their destination safely, it is also the passengers' obligation to be mindful of the safety measures in place. Our local travel agent on island said that the incident was sorted out by Air New Zealand, who reported the incident to airport authorities to deal with. BCN tried several times to contact Air New Zealand office in Auckland, but were unable to get a comment. There was an accident on Thursday night last week. A motor vehicle went off the road on the road adjacent to the airport. The motor vehicle suffered extensive frontal and side damage and was deemed written off, although the driver, the owner of the vehicle, only suffered minor bruises and bumps and managed to walk away. The police have yet to finish their investigation, although it was alleged that speeding and alcohol was involved. Chief of Police Tony Edwards has once again urged the public to please think hard about speeding, especially when under the influence of alcohol. He told BCN that the police are working towards impounding motor vehicles whose owners or drivers are too intoxicated to drive on public roads. They don't have that authority to do so yet, but the general public is advised that they will exercise that authority once legislation is approved for the safety of everyone. He said that driving to road conditions is paramount at all times, and driving at speed under the influence of alcohol is not recommended, as drivers will be severely dealt to. Anyone caught will be charged and prosecuted accordingly. And that concludes our news bulletin for this evening. Do join us again for our next news bulletin on Tuesday next week. Have an enjoyable weekend.